Good morning. My name is Ann Margulies. I'm the university CIO. On behalf of the CIO Council, welcome to the 7th annual and largest ever IT Summit. As of yesterday, we had over 1,300 people registering. So if it feels a little cozy in some of the sessions, you know why. After 7 years, we have a few traditions. The most important legitimate tradition of our CIO Council is we start with an IT joke. Are you ready? How many developers does it take to change a light bulb? None. It's a hardware problem. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Just the other day, here's another one. I heard a little girl ask her father, it was really sweet, what are clouds made of? And of course he answered, servers. Okay, as you know, that's the hardest part of this. As you know, the goals of this summit are to connect us more closely with the university mission, to learn from one another, and to build an IT community across the university. We have a great summit planned for you. 2 extraordinary keynote speakers, close to 40 concurrent sessions, and plenty of time to meet and connect with your colleagues throughout the day. Every year we hear from people who say it's incredibly difficult to decide which sessions to attend. Sorry, you are definitely going to have that same problem this year. Just remember, it's a great problem for us to have. To ensure that the concurrent sessions are extremely relevant to you, we enlisted the help of a program selection committee. They did a great job selecting a program from an impressive range of proposals. Special thanks to the committee for taking the time to go through all of them in detail. We have sessions from faculty on global health, Prediction X, and leveraging the cloud. And we have a special guest, the president of EDUCAUSE, John O'Brien, who's going to be talking about the top 10 IT trends in higher ed. And we have many sessions from your IT colleagues on exciting new technologies and their benefits. Thank you to everyone who submitted ideas, and a huge thanks to all of our presenters today. As you know, the IT Summit is sponsored by the CIO Council, which is made up of CIOs from each of Harvard's schools and members of the Hewitt senior leadership team. CIO Council, please stand up. I am so grateful for all the time and energy they dedicate to advancing the role of IT and for making Harvard a great place to work for IT professionals. Please join me in thanking them. CIO Council members today have red ribbons on their badges. If you see them, please introduce yourself to them, and also thank them for hosting another great summit. In 2012, the CIO Council created the university's IT strategic plan. As you know, the plan outlines 16 key initiatives that we can do as a university to help make it easier for our community to teach, learn, and work. I'm pleased to report that we have launched all 16 initiatives, and by the end of this month, in just a few weeks, we'll have completed more than half of them. The strategic initiatives we've completed in the last few years are helping us realize our vision. We're providing faculty and students effortless access to teaching and learning resources through My.Harvard and Canvas. We're supporting rapid and profound innovation in research through the Research Computing Council, and we're enabling innovation and teaching and learning through our partnership with the Vice Provost for Advances in Learning on HarvardX and Learning Analytics. And we've made it easier for 26,000 of our community to collaborate using a common platform to schedule meetings and to send email. These accomplishments are huge, the impact is real, and we continue to push forward. This year, we launched exciting new initiatives in user experience and data management, while at the same time, the CIO Council has already begun to think about the next version of our strategic plan. We have a hunch that it'll be different from the current plan. We don't expect to see 16 more initiatives, hopefully fewer. And because we have such a strong foundation to build upon, based upon all of the work over the last several years, we're positioned to provide even bigger benefits to our community. So we also have a hunch our plan will be more about how we can help our community use technology and how we can do a better job delivering technology. We really need your input to help make it a great plan. And the survey that you'll receive after the summit will be asking you what you would add to the plan so that you can help shape the vision. Keep an eye out for the survey. It'll be in your inboxes shortly, and thank you in advance for giving it some thought and giving us your ideas. Evolving IT at Harvard also means that we, as IT professionals, must continue to evolve. It seems hard to believe that it was just 2 years ago at this very summit that we launched the IT Academy. You'll see in just a minute the impact it has made at Harvard. And others outside of Harvard are noticing. Several of our peers have told me that they are beginning to launch their own academies modeled after ours. Let's watch.
Being an IT professional used to mean that you were a specialist in one particular technology, but our role is really changing.
Technology is ubiquitous. It's present in how we manage, do administration, how we teach, how we pursue research and scholarship.
It's not just what we're doing that's changing, it's how we do it.
We created the IT Academy to make it easier for IT staff to learn new skills and to build a strong community. And it's working.
There aren't that many opportunities for IT teams across Harvard to meet. The IT Academy gives them a chance to do just that.
The IT Academy helps us align with what the university is doing.
The IT Academy has provided a common language for us to use across the IT department.
It's important because we're all going into the same sets of problems with the same understanding.
One of the things that struck me is how often I hear folks referencing what they've learned.
What excites me about IT Academy is the opportunity to take classes that aren't in my specialized discipline.
What surprised me is the overwhelming reaction we've got from all the participants that come. People are like, wow, this is the best workshop I've ever taken.
I like the idea that it's a facilitated conversation among my peers rather than just a lecture that's being delivered by a contractor who doesn't know about Harvard.
We do the training ourselves. We build the content.
I think the IT Academy is one of a kind because it's geared specifically to exactly what we need as IT practitioners at Harvard.
I think it's a great resource for the university. It provides us with opportunities to see the big picture.
Building a network of relationships is key to being effective in the IT field at Harvard.
It's great. My team can work together in a collaborative environment.
IT Academy allows me to get out of my silo. There's a place to develop skills, there's a place to explore new skills.
There is a ripple effect that just one class can have.
The fact that Harvard is investing in IT makes me feel valued.
We work for one of the best higher education institutions in the world. We also have some of the best IT staff.
You'll notice that some of your colleagues here today are wearing white ribbons on their badges. They are our IT Academy facilitators. They are the heart and soul of the IT Academy, all 52 of them. Please introduce yourselves to them and thank them for the great work that they're doing for the IT Academy. And now for our main event. I'm pleased to invite Don Oppenheimer, Associate Dean and CIO of the Harvard Kennedy School, up, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thanks, Anne, for the ice-breaking jokes, which you are known and loved for across the university. I am privileged and honored to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, Nicco Mele from the Kennedy School of Government. In 2016, after serving as Senior Vice President and Deputy Publisher of the Los Angeles Times, and as the Wallace Annenberg Chair in Journalism at USC, fortunate for us, Nicco returned to HKS for a second tour of duty. Currently, Nicco is the Director of the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy, which is one of the 11 research centers housed at HKS. In his earlier time at Harvard, from 2009 to 2014, Nicco served on the faculty at HKS teaching classes on the internet and politics, and was associated with both the Shorenstein Center as well as Harvard's Institute of Politics. Outside of Harvard, yes, there is life outside of Harvard, Nicco is well known as a successful entrepreneur, angel investor, and consultant to technology startups, as well as interpreter and forecaster of the impact of today's digital age on business, politics, and culture. His first book, published in 2013, The End of Big: How the Internet Makes David the New Goliath, explores the consequences of living in a socially connected society. But Nicco doesn't just write about the impact of the digital age on our society. He has impressively made his own impact. After graduating from the College of William & Mary, he worked for several high-profile advocacy groups where he pioneered the use of social media as a fundraising tool. As webmaster for Governor Howard Dean's 2004 presidential bid, Nicco and team popularized the use of technology and social media for a political campaign, which revolutionized political fundraising and reshaped American electoral politics. I'm not sure, however, if at the time he envisioned the use of tweeting from the Oval Office. I could go on with other accomplishments and recognition from his formal biography, like how he was listed as one of America's best and brightest. But I won't, because his many accomplishments will take too long to mention. But before bringing Nicco up to the stage, I do want to share with everyone a little-known fact about his impressive career you won't find on his formal bio. And that is that his second and most important job he ever had, and one that clearly influenced the rest of his life, was working for 4 years on an IT help desk. Proving, if nothing else, there's still hope for the rest of us. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Nicco Mele.
Good morning. It is great to be here this morning because you are the most important people on campus. I'm going to start today with 1984. I think the world changed in 1984. And since we have a fine room full of nerds, many of you will recall that was the year that Steve Jobs introduced the first Macintosh personal computer. But that's not what I'm talking about. In 1984, a guy named Chuck Hull invented something called stereolithography. Today, we call stereolithography 3D printing. I have a 3D printer. It takes spools of plastic thread and sprays them into shapes. My kids, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she is super into dinosaurs, and so I went and downloaded the blueprints to print a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I printed it for her. My boys, who are 6 and 8, when they want more Legos, I print them. I even tried, to my wife's dismay, to print a replacement part for our broken dishwasher, which ended in total disaster. I originally bought a 3D printer about 4 or 5 years ago, and my aspiration was to print basically Crocs for my children. That my boys were growing so fast, it felt like every 6 weeks we were buying a new pair of shoes, and this was ridiculous. Let's just print some and then melt them down and print them again a little bit bigger. And about the same time I was doing that, a guy released the blueprints to print a fully functional handgun. Just buy some ammunition. And I think this story about me trying to print shoes and Legos for my kids and how awesome and exciting and cool that is, that my kids are growing up in a world when they want more toys, Daddy prints them, that also coexists with some profound challenges to how we think about everything from security to regulation. And my overall thesis, the argument I'm going to make to you today, is that you are the most important people on campus because you understand the incredible power of this technology that pushes power out of institutions to individuals. That it used to be you needed a giant factory to manufacture plastic Legos, and now you can go to Staples and buy a 3D printer for $250, $300, and you can print them. And that takes the power out of institutions and pushes it to individuals, creating inherent challenges for people like you who understand that technology but work inside a giant institution whose bureaucracy predates the US government by 100 years. And my argument is that our technology is fundamentally challenging to anything that has scale, right? Hello, yes, of course this is going to happen. To big news and journalism, there's about 40% the number of journalists in the United States today that were employed 15 years ago. To big political parties, Donald Trump, a man with no prior real experience or allegiance to the Republican Party, wins the nomination, is now the president. Big government. I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened in my neighborhood in Arlington that was really challenging to the nature of the government. Big armies. By some measures, the US government spent approximately $3 trillion trying to defeat Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda over the same time period spent about $5 million. Big fun. You know, if we look at the way music and movies and all of our entertainment works today, it's totally diffused and atomized, and about individuals on YouTube you never heard of who make money and your kids watch and think are brilliant. Across the board, big manufacturing, even, I dare say, big universities, our technology profoundly empowers individuals in a way that is really threatening, really damaging to the institutions that the 20th century was built on. And that is both a good thing and a bad thing. You know, I started my life, as Don told you, on a help desk. I went on to be a developer, LAMP stack developer, PHP, MySQL, and I would sit in meetings as, you know, the nerd, they don't really want to talk to anybody to talk, right? I'd sit in these meetings in companies, at the Democratic Party, at sometimes even, I dare say, here at Harvard, and I would listen to the people in charge talk, and I would think, what world are you living in? That's not my world. We'll just, like, do you understand how fast that will happen online once somebody who understands code gets a hold of it? And for many years, I thought I just was missing something, that there was just something about the world I didn't understand, and that the people in charge understood it. And then I was reading a book about World War I. It's called The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman, and I highly recommend it. Go read the first 5 pages of The Guns of August. I'm sure you can get them free on Amazon as a sample. The first 5 pages of The Guns of August describes the funeral of the King of England, King Edward VII. He died in May 1910. And she says that his funeral was the most opulent event in human history. Something like 70 nations were there, and they sent a huge amount of wealth and military power to go on display. If you were at the funeral of King Edward VII in May 1910, you would think the monarchy would last for 200 years. It looked like the strongest, most powerful force on the planet, and that nothing that strong and powerful had ever existed. And in fact, after his funeral, the new King of England, King George, writes some letters to his first cousins, the Tsar of Russia and the Kaiser of Germany. He'd grown up with them, they were best friends, they spent every summer together. And he says, just imagine in 2017 when our grandchildren are monarchs of Europe and the colonies. Because it was inconceivable that in a generation, that world order would disappear. And that is the moment we are living in right now. The world order we see that we assume to be so powerful and to be wealthy and to be there forever is actually enormously fragile. And our technology is playing a crucial role in reshaping that order. And it's really up to all of you in this audience as to how that will turn out. What do I mean? Aha! What is this? A computer. Yes, that is a bench that you sit on and wait for an answer. This is a Cray supercomputer, Cray 1 from 1975. Does anybody know the base price? $7.9 million base price and $1 million for disks. 8.9 million bucks. Today, I carry around on my person a device so much more powerful than this computer that they're almost not, you almost can't even compare them. They're almost not even the same species. Let's imagine for a minute that you are a high school kid in the 60s and you've heard about these things called computers and you want to go to college and play with one, but they cost $8 million bucks. Your only choice is to go to a university. The only people who could afford these machines were big universities, big corporations, and big governments, right? These were exclusively the domain of the largest institutions on earth. Does anybody want to guess the first computer science program in the United States, the first department of computer science at an American university? What university? What's that? UCLA, no. What's that? I think I just heard it. Purdue University. That is exactly right. Purdue University had the first department of computer science. What year? 1962. In 1962, the first department of computer science was formed at Purdue University. So you're in college, you're nerdy like me, you love computers, you're hanging out. What else is happening on college campuses in the 60s? The Civil Rights Movement, the anti-war movement. Okay, so you graduate with a degree in computer science, say, I'm making this up, 1968. You want to go get a job writing code or working on computers. Who's hiring computer scientists? the Pentagon, and IBM. You have to wear a suit and tie to work every day at IBM. And many of IBM's contracts are Pentagon contracts. In fact, at the University of Wisconsin, they were trying to install a supercomputer, and it got shut down because of protests. They called it a blood machine. The anti-war protesters, the Iliac machine. And so you have a generation of computer scientists graduating from college with degrees in computer science who have grown up in the middle of the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement, and they don't want to go work for the man. In 1974, Ted Nelson publishes this book, Computer Lib. You can and must understand computers now. Incidentally, Ted Nelson is the man who comes up with the idea for hypertext. In this book, he has a line, in the future, hundreds of people will have their own computers, and thousands will want them. That was not that long ago, folks. And Ted Nelson says, we must do something radical. We must invent a personal computer. Because right now, computers are only the domain of the powerful, and they will use them to spill our blood in wars we do not want a part of. We must claim power back from the institutions and build the personal computer. Personal computing is a political act. And this book is part of a growing movement. It inspires a whole generation. Bill Gates, with his first gazillion dollars, buys the rights to this book and republishes it in Microsoft Press, 1984. If you've read Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, you'll read about this book in there. This was like a profound moment among the nerds that computing power is power. And so, in a nutshell, I mean, there's Moore's law and, Reed's law and all that stuff, but pretty quickly we go from these giant machines that cost millions of dollars that would fill this stage to a computer on every desk. Then we start plugging them into each other. I was Novell NetWare certified, H-Drive, shared printers. And then we start to plug them all into all the other ones for the internet, TCP/IP, beautiful thing. And now we walk around with these devices on our person, and it's nuts. If I said to you that 35 years from now, you'll be able to walk into any strip mall anywhere in the world, and for $200 and a low monthly metered plan, buy a Boeing 777, you would think I was nuts. And yet that's exactly what has happened with computing over the last 35 years. This is a profound change. And when I think about how it changes power, I think it has three characteristics. First, this is about the individual. I have the power on my device. I call the Uber. If you look at the top 1,000 accounts on Twitter, you do not find brands. You do not find institutions. You find people. If you look at the top 1,000 Facebook accounts, there's no MTV, there's no White House. There are people, individuals. It's a profoundly individual medium, and we have to understand it as being essentially anti-institutional. Next, it's intimate. People take these things to the bathroom with them. My wife and I had to make a deal. We were going to charge the phones downstairs, not in the bedroom, right? These are intimate devices we carry with us everywhere. And not only that, but this is how we find intimate things. I get an email from my uncle about his illness. I hear that my best friend is going to get married. These are intimate devices with a ton of personal relationship with them, and we don't want institutions on them. And then they're also intentional. John Battelle calls Google the database of intentions. I Google white minivan, Google knows I'm looking to buy a white minivan. That's my intention to purchase. In the past, with television and radio, it's not as intentional. It's pretty passive in mass media. And with our technology, we have intention. People fire up their browsers or their inbox to do something, to seek out someone or some piece of information, to take an action. Individual, intimate, and intentional. And that profoundly shapes power. What do I mean? Let me tell you a story. Who ran for president in 1984? Walter Mondale. What was the problem with Walter Mondale? He was boring. Walter Mondale, what were his qualifications to run for president? He'd been vice president in the United States. Jimmy Carter was president, Walter Mondale was vice president. Walter Mondale had spent his entire life preparing to run for president, working his way up the Democratic Party ranks. And here he is in 1994, and his opponent in the general is Ronald Reagan, a literal movie star. You have a movie star and one of the most boring men ever to appear in national politics. And Democrats, and I love them, but Democrats across the country, they were not that excited about Walter Mondale. There weren't a ton of people who wanted to line up and vote for Walter Mondale in the primary. But everybody kind of thought, oh, well, I guess it's his turn. I guess he can't be beaten. He knows everybody. He kissed every baby. He knows every committee chair. And then, imagine for a moment you're a liberal Democrat in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a real stretch of imagination, I'm sure. And it's the morning after the New Hampshire primary, and you weren't going to stay up late because, of course, Walter Mondale is going to win. And you go out and you pick up this thing, which no one even knows what they are anymore, called a newspaper. And it says, Mondale loses in a landslide to Gary Hart. And you're like, who the hell is Gary Hart? He just totally beat Mondale. And Mondale, it's his turn. He's supposed to be unbeatable. And Gary Hart was handsome, and he wasn't a movie star, but he kind of looked like he was a movie star. And he was from Colorado, from the West. And he was smart, and he was so good on television. And you think, yes, we don't have to lose to Reagan. Finally, someone who can defeat Ronald Reagan. Gary Hart, he just has to win the primary. He has to beat Mondale in the primary. So you decide you're going to support Gary Hart, and you're going to write a check because he needs money. Where do you mail the check? The campaign's been around 90 days. Most municipalities don't have 411 in 1984. They're not in the yellow pages. Thousands of Americans wrote checks and mailed them to this address, Senator Gary Hart, Washington, D.C. That's it. All these checks arrive at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., but that's his government office. Can't take political money there. They ship all the checks to Colorado, where the campaign office is. And I talked to one of the volunteers who was there when the post office backed a truck in. And then what did they have to do? They have to open the checks, the envelopes, take out the checks, endorse the back of the check. Out-of-state check in 1994 takes 4 to 8 weeks to clear. By the time the money is in the bank and he can actually afford to hire staffers and rent buses and print yard signs and run television and radio ads, it's too late. He's lost the primary. Why am I telling you this story? Because in 2008, someone who had been in the White House for 8 years, who had spent her entire life working her way up the Democratic Party ladder, ran for president. Everyone assumed she was unbeatable. Everyone assumed she would win. We forget, almost every member of the Congressional Black Caucus endorsed Hillary, not Obama. And then Obama wins in Iowa. He does what people thought was impossible. He defeats Hillary Clinton. A man who'd been in public life less than a decade defeats the woman who she and her husband built the modern Democratic Party. It was their party, and somehow he manages to defeat her in the Iowa caucus. And what do people do? They go to BarackObama.com and they give him $100. And overnight, he's financially competitive with Hillary Clinton. and they duke it out. And in the month of February, when they are running through the primaries and the caucuses, he doesn't have to do any fundraising events because the money is pouring in online. And she has to go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, $2,000 a plate fundraising events. He ends up with a structural advantage. But this is not just about Obama. Over the next 8 years, we saw the Tea Party do this in more than a dozen US Senate races. We had very conservative US senators, like Senator Bennett in Utah, defeated in their own primaries by an insurgent candidate, using the internet to be competitive financially and competitive message-wise. And given that trajectory, it's really no surprise that we ended up with this man winning the nomination and winning the presidency, although that maybe was a bit of a surprise to some. The technology took away all of the advantages of the institutional party. The technology leveled the playing field. It pushed power to the individual. You can see that right now in the president's tweeting, right? It's outside of the institution, outside of the norms. It is a totally different kind of power, and we're really not prepared for that. A measure of my respect and admiration for you is that I am on this stage and not glued to the television watching James Comey. And that is... But today is going to be a perfect example of the confrontation between the old power, the old institutional power, and the new power, the individual unconstrained by norms and institutions. That's the reality we're living in. Don't forget King Edward VII and his funeral. Now, just in case you're not terrified enough, here's another example. If I said to you, John F. Kennedy is shot, and what do most Americans who are alive then remember about how they heard the news? Well, what's that? Walter Cronkite, that's right. Walter Cronkite took off his glasses and cried on national television for a dead president. And if I say to you, Watergate, what do you think of? Woodward and Bernstein, two young journalists who brought down a US president. And if I think about the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, well, that was the moment that CNN, Bernard Shaw, CNN shows up. People start watching CNN because this is happening and it's live and it's incredible. And then we think about September 11th, right? And watching that on TV, and I think probably the entire country stopped to watch Rudy Giuliani's press conferences twice a day. Twice a day he did these live press conferences, and it felt like the whole world stopped and watched him on television. So here are some major milestones in US history, all of them mediated by journalists, by journalism, by institutions of news. And they shaped our view, and we shared something. We shared our experience of watching this together, of reading this all together. Now, let's think about the day Osama bin Laden got killed. A guy named Keith Urban. Keith had been chief of staff to Donald Rumsfeld when Donald Rumsfeld was in the Pentagon in the Bush administration. He was well known, he was trusted among defense, intelligence, and journalists. This is a serious guy, Republican, but a serious guy who did good work. He's got about 400 followers on Twitter, and he tweets. And he's not, remember, Obama's president. He's a Republican. He's not in the administration. He tweets, "Hot damn, I'm told they've killed Osama bin Laden." Dave Weiner calls this sources go direct. He tweets this and it goes viral. Boom, like that. It starts spreading. He's got 400 followers, but within 2 hours, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people have seen this news. It starts to spread on Facebook, on Twitter. It's spreading so fast that it looks like, we don't know for sure, but it looks like the Obama administration moves up the press conference announcing this because the word is out and millions of Americans know already and they had better say something. And this all happens without a journalist, just through the platforms. And then some of you may have heard about this guy, Sohaib Athar, who lived a few doors down from Osama bin Laden, who accidentally live tweeted the raid saying, dude, there's a helicopter on my neighbor's roof and that never happens. What is going on? It's a quiet, sleepy suburban neighborhood. And so when we look at the production of news, how do we report news? We look at the distribution of news. How do people learn about it? We look at the institutions, like schools of journalism, producing graduates for whom there are no jobs. And then we look at the business model. It's no wonder that journalism is collapsing and fake news is filling that void. That's not a shock. So, here we are. What do we do about it? What do you do about it? Well, first, I think we have to totally rethink our relationships with the people we deal with. This means that you never really have the power. I'm supposed to be a professor at Harvard, and everything I say, my students Google to see if it's true. Okay? They don't respect or understand my authority and expertise. I have to rethink what that classroom dynamic is, how I teach, so that they take me seriously, so we can actually get some learning done. But the very nature of the relationship is just different. You are not an audience. You are the former audience. I know, all of you are up there. You got your phones, you're tweeting, you're doing Signal. God only knows what you're saying about me and my presentation. You have so much. You could all go on Amazon and give my book a 1-star review without reading it and deep six the sales. You have that power, right? You also have the power to give it 5 stars, but I'm just saying. And one just quick story about that is I live in Lexington, but right up against Arlington Heights. And I have I said earlier, I have 2 little boys, 8 and 6, and a daughter. And we live near this Robbins Farm Park. And I love Robbins Farm Park because there's these 2 slides that are giant. And I sit on the bench and I say to the boys, oh yeah, run up there, do that again. And they run up it 30, 40 times. They are exhausted. That is the goal. That's the goal. Well, about 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, a storm comes through and destroys the slides. And you know, it's actually pretty hard to figure out from the city government what the plan is. But it seems like, I don't know, some months go by and there's not really, it's taking forever. And so finally, somebody, I don't even know who, puts up this sign and puts up a PayPal page and says, if we raise $25,000, we can rebuild the slides, right? And boom, they raised that money like every parent on that playground wants those slides back, right? But this is actually kind of the purpose of government, is to do this kind. That's what taxes are for. And I don't know the whole story, but it's easy to imagine that maybe they didn't want to build the slides because they wanted to fix a sewage problem or put in a new power solution, or there are all kinds of really good reasons they might not want to fix the slides right away. And the more that we ignore the power of the people around us, the more dangerous it gets. You must acknowledge that power that individuals carry and figure out what to do with it. That's the next thing, figure out what to do with it. I think that success in the next 100 years boils down to your ability to combine leadership and direction with distributed power, with recognizing the power that people have. Let me give you a very intense example. I was 2013, April 15th. I was teaching, and a student of mine says to me, Billy says, you know, I'm running in the Boston Marathon, so I'm going to skip class. Okay, that's a good reason. I'm never going to run a marathon, so more power to you. And my class ended about 1 o'clock, and I pulled up on the screen the marathon website and put in his number and said, let's see where he is. He's making great time. He's going to finish about 3 o'clock. Hooray, Billy. And then I'm sitting in my office, and I see this photo on Twitter. And at first, I really don't believe it. And then it's clear this happened, and I look at my watch, and it's 3 o'clock. And I'm terrified. I think Billy has 2 little girls the same age as my boys. And I'm just really worried. And for some, you know, inexplicable, stupid reason, I go on Facebook. And Billy had posted at 3:11, okay. And I'm relieved. And in that moment, I love the technology. It just helped me navigate my fears and let me know that a student and friend was safe. And then, you know, you all were there, many of you remember, 5,000 Bostonians put on a Google Doc volunteering their guest bedrooms and sofas for stranded people. It was such a beautiful moment. And people raised money. This was a friend of a friend, raised like $100,000 for an injured family, right away, in like 24 hours. It was insane, the speed and intensity of people's generosity. But of course, people were angry too. Who did this? We got to catch those guys. And so that's a legitimate feeling. We got to catch these guys in that anger. And so they went on the internet too. And they started organizing to say, who did this? Let's find him. Send the photos. Let's look. Right? And they end up identifying the wrong guy. The internet puts up, Reddit figures out they think this guy did it, and they go after him, and NBC picks it up, and it's the wrong guy. And I actually spoke to the poor man's mother, who said her son had been missing for 3 weeks, and she went to bed terrified for her son and woke up with 400 protesters on her lawn shouting at her she's a murderer. It turns out he'd committed suicide, was not at all associated with this at all. People have this power, they have this energy, they have this anger, they are going to use it. They are going to use it. And we have to build ways for them to channel that anger and channel that energy to get things done, right? Clay Shirky has a book called Cognitive Surplus. He says if you take every second spent creating Wikipedia over the last, 18 years or something since it was founded, every second, every minute spent creating Wikipedia, that's 1% of the time Americans watched television last year. People have the power. Let's channel it. Let's give them work to do. Otherwise, they're going to do it themselves outside of institutions in dangerous ways. And my last point is we got to demand technical literacy. You got to know the difference between a server and a waiter. I know all of you know this, right? But you need to demand this of the people you work with who don't have it, right? You need to ask and really figure out ways to get people to engage and learn about the technology. I always say the cloud is just someone else's computer, and you want to know whose computer it is, right? We have to have better technical literacy among our leaders. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to navigate the madness that's coming, that we live in right now. But the other side is you have to fight nerd disease, okay? The thing I hate most in the world is the Genius Bar. They're not geniuses. And it's dangerous for them to think it and for everybody else to think it. I worked on a help desk, IT help desk, for 4 years. We had this thing in our ticketing system, PEBCAC. Problem exists between keyboard and chair, right? You got to think of those not as problems, but as opportunities. Opportunities to engage people and get them interested in understanding technology. Because it's really dangerous, and it will ultimately make all of your lives harder. Right? We got to fight nerd disease. It's too complicated. It's magic. Let the nerds deal with it. No, we're not in a moment where that's okay. And then finally, you know, there are depending on how you count it, 7, 8 companies that really completely control the online space. Amazon, Apple, eBay, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Snapchat, and Twitter. And we have to demand greater accountability from them. They make decisions every day that are decisions that actually governments maybe should be making. And I guess my final thought is this. I'm really honored to speak to you today. I meant what I said when I started, that you are the most powerful people on campus. And I really want to encourage you, inspire you, demand that you take your power seriously. That you find ways of engaging with your community and with the people around you so that they better understand the technology, its implications, and so that we figure out and invent some new ways of doing this that will be constructive rather than destructive. Thank you very much.
How great was that? Thank you so much, Nicco, and how great was that? How amazing is it that we get to work here at Harvard among people like Nicco? Thank you so much. Just a few very quick housekeeping notes before we break. All of the concurrent sessions, just like last year, are at Emerson and Seaver Hall, right in Harvard Yard. There are posters in the buildings, and there are plenty of people around to help you if you have questions. Here are the key timing for the day. We'll all be together again at 11:45 across the transept in Annenberg. Please be back here at 3:30 for another amazing keynote by Kareem Lakhani. Don't miss it. You'll really, really regret it if you miss that. And then finally, we'll see you this afternoon at the reception in Annenberg at 4:30. Thank you again for being here, and have a great day.